And welcome to Flexible Games, where we are starting the adventure of modding programming, modding projects, question and answers. I plan on doing more streaming, so that way I can interact in real time while doing this, because it's going to be a learning experience for me, and it's going to be hopefully a learning experience and, semi entertaining when I mess up completely, which, will happen. So I want to try to ease our way in to the modding scene, to the modding project, by talking about, in general, the changes to the channel that I've mentioned in previous streams of Fortress Craft. If you haven't watched those, you may be confused. I am sort of stepping away from the Let's Play format. I think people are ready to move on. The viewership has not been good. So I want to try to mix things up. I still want to be creative. I still want to, try to solve problems. And the best way to do that is to actually make mods and, take take ideas, take, excitement around generating content rather than just sort of showing content. There's in my mind, there's a difference between just doing like a let's play and just kind of covering what a game has, and actually getting down and dirty and programming content, making something work, building something from scratch. And so that's where we're going to try to move into. And the game that I am going to primarily work in, the API, is for Vintage Story. As you can see, I've got the cathedral I built in Vintage Story as the background for Windows, because I am very proud of the roughly 200 to 400 hours. I can't even remember anymore how many hours we put into that project, but it was a lot, and it was worth it because it turned out great. But Vintage Story is one of those games that I'd really like to promote, and I believe in the developers. I believe in the project and what they're doing and how they have absolutely embraced the modding scene and the modding community. They basically built a modding API and then built a game on top of the modding API. And the only other game I'm aware of that does that is Factorio, and we all know how much I've played that game. So anything is possible, anything is moddable in Vintage Story, and with that blank canvas, you can play the game that you want, and you can pick and choose which mods you want. You can customize those mods, and that will be the focus, the primary focus of the channel for most likely the next year, is programming, outlining, brainstorming, for that game. I want to create a mod for Vintage Story that expands on the end game of the game. So the end game in Vintage Story, if you haven't watched my series, the end game is making steel. And you need a big multi-block structure to create steel. You create steel 16 bars at a time, and it takes roughly an in-game week to create it. So it's a time-consuming process, but what I want to do is create a mod that's akin or takes its inspiration from immersive engineering from Minecraft, and take immersive engineering and immersive petroleum. Those are, in my mind, some of the same mods because they use the same framework, and build on that, and sort of as the inspiration for my mod. I'm gonna pull from those mods, mainly because I've never done a very large modding project. Most of my mods are small, self-contained, single block or single item mods. Case in point, what we're gonna do today. What I want to do today is show what work needs to be done to update a coded mod from one version of Vintage Story to the next version, right? So right now, all of my mods are released for 1.17 of Vintage Story. Well, the 1.18 version is now in progress, in release candidate. So it's quickly moving to stable, but when it's in RC mode, they have very, very limited API changes. So most of the changes are done, and it's pretty safe to update mods, especially simple mods. And most of my current mods are pretty simple in terms of what API they use, and it's pretty safe to update them. So we're going to start with the Angel Belt mod, which is, I'm pretty sure it was the first code mod that I made, and I've learned a lot since then. And the last version of it, I put some bug fixes in and everything. So this version, I should just be able to load up, make sure the DLLs are mapped, and recompile, and it should hopefully go off without a hitch. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about project setup, and I've gone through all of my mods for Vintage Story, and I've normalized all of the setups, right? So they all have the same sort of directory and other structure mapping inside. And that is to get them all on source control. So all of my mods are now on GitHub. And I believe my GitHub is github.com/flexiblegames. I'm pretty sure that's what the directory or the URL is. Even my mods that aren't code mods, they're still up on GitHub. It's a source control thing. It'll still track JSON changes. So all of my mods are there, and that's what I'm going to use to show the changes from one version to the next. So you can go up there and see exactly what changes, or you can use GitHub and look at my mods and see how I implemented certain things and try to learn from that. The whole point of these projects is to enrich the game, but also to strengthen and grow the modding community and make more people confident that they can go in and code their own mods. So the first thing I did when I downloaded and installed the new version of Vintage Story, which is RC2, so 1.18 release candidate 2, I got that installed, which was pretty easy. And then I took all of my old mods out, obviously. I created a world here called just Mod Test World. All one word, simple Mod Test World. The reason why I create a more or less simple, generic, like survival world instead of just a pure creative world is the mods that I make are intended to be played in a survival environment. And I found out early on that if I just tested my mods in a creative world, I could easily miss bugs or other problems because I wasn't testing them in a survival environment. So even with a survival game, I still have access to command line commands that I can give myself things. I can switch back and forth, creative and survival. But having a test world that's a normal world also allows me to test world gen changes. Specifically, there was a plenty mod with the new trees and stuff. It's a lot easier to test in a modded survival test world because a creative world is just flat, nothing, no terrain, no trees. It's just nothingness. So, in order to test certain things, you have to generate a normal world. So it's called Mod Test World, and that's going to be important in a second. So then we want to start up Visual Studio, and we're going to open a project, and we're going to go to Angel Belt. And now you can see I've got a directory for code and a directory for mod. The code is just what it is. This is where the code lies. The mod, that's where all the mod assets are, right? So when you zip a mod up, you have an assets folder, you have a mod info JSON, you have all the things that make the mod, all of the non-code elements. And that is what goes into mod. And so every one of these vintage story mods has a code, if it has code, but they all have the mod. And so it's just, I tried to normalize it. If you have your own way of organizing all of this, more power to you. More power to you. So we're going to go into code and we're going to open the Angel Belt. Okay. So the Angel Belt is a pretty straightforward mod. And we're going to go in here and make sure the references, right, are the same. Because I installed Vintage Story in the same place as the other version, the DLLs didn't move and they didn't change their name. They just changed the version of the DLLs. So these are still linked just fine. They're there, they're linked, and I don't see any red in here, which means initial glances means none of the API that I was using actually changed. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to go into our assembly info and we want to change the version of our assembly to a new version. And we're going to update the copyright. It's the Angel Belt, assembly version. We're just going to bump up the version number. I keep forgetting to do this, so I want to make sure to bump this up. Assembly file version. I guess this one doesn't matter. The assembly version is the important one because you want to bump that version a little bit. And it depends, however you want to do it. I could do 1.18.1, right? So this is for 1.18. This is the first version of 1.18. If I was when the time comes where I have a really big mod to update, I could be bumping this smaller version numbers, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, as I fix bugs with the new version and as features are being added. So 1.18.1, that's a good indication that this is going to be for 1.18, and this is basically 1.0 for 1.18. So essentially, the next version of the game, 1.19, all I would need to do is come in here and do 1.19.1. Unless there's a bunch of code or other bugs that creep in on 1.19, I might have multiple builds of that. But 1.18.1 that's a good standard to come up with. Now you could put in a bunch of other things in here, but this is a pretty simple mod. And I've already fixed the bugs. I haven't gotten any reports of other bugs. There are feature additions that one could basically do. If you wanted an Angel Belt, let's say, give an Angel Belt some durability. And while you're using the Angel Belt, it's slowly using the durability. But that would require the mod itself to dial into the update tick rate of the game. On every update tick, you would have to check to see if the player is flying. If they are flying, you then decrease the durability by whatever set amount, and then that would have to run every tick. And I try to, in most of my mods, I really, really try to avoid adding more stuff on top of the ticking rate of the game. I really try to do that, because the more objects, the more stuff you have that has to tie into that tick rate, the slower the game will become over time, as people add more and more stuff to that tick rate. So I just am very careful on that. I made the thing expensive enough. You know, if you're playing vanilla, it is really expensive. The gold that it takes to make, very, very rare. You know, you have to find a lot of gold to make this thing. And the feathers as well. The feather cost, again, very expensive. I mean, you have to find a lot of chickens in order to get the feathers for it. So I made it expensive enough to make sure that it was good to go. But yeah, one feature, if you wanted to test your programming prowess, would be to do a fork of this, add some durability, and if you did a pull request, I would review it. And, you know, if it works, you know, what I would do is add a flag to enable or disable the feature, you know, just a true false on a config, and say, if you want to use this new feature, you can just set this to true, and now you have durability. And server owners could set that, which would cause a pretty standard consumption of the materials required to make it. But let's try to build it. We're going to rebuild it. Let's see. We are in release mode right here. Release mode. And the other thing I want to show, the test mod world that I shown up there before. App data, roaming, vintage story, data, saves, mod test world. This becomes important because if we were to debug this, and we go into debug properties, you can see what I have set up. Every one of my projects has this. And if you were to fork the thing, you would have to customize these, you know, in order to have them mapped properly. But you can debug a mod in real time by starting the external program, and then you pass it command line parameters. And I want to pass it this name, mod test world, right here. Okay. What that would do is it adds the mod path to the mod directory, right? Vintage Angel Bell mod. That's the mod directory. All the assets, mod info is in there. And then it opens the world, mod test world, automatically. So if I did this right, fingers crossed, testing it live in a recording, not a good idea. But if I did this right, I can start debugging. Game is already running. It should not be. Task manager, vintage story client. I guess it is. We're going to stop that. I don't know why that was running. That was weird. I mean, I did just run it, so this is, I mean, it's a release candidate version of the game, so there could be some odd bugs. But as you can see, it loads right away. And it looks like it did not load. Mod test world. What is that? Why would that? Obviously, the -O we're gonna delete. Because you can see the pen world. Mod test world. Wait. So the -O, it just ignored the open world. So -O mod test world. Let's try this again. I'm just trying to do this in real time here. I'm not seeing. There it is. That worked. All right. This was the world that I loaded in. I recognize it. But I don't think. Yeah, it's not loading the actual mod. So there is something off about the directory that I set. It is copying all the things. I mean, you can see it's good to go. Because I have in here build events. I'm copying target directory star.star is just, if you do the edit post build macros, target directory is in here, and it's just where this stuff is going to be placed, right? This is where it's going to be shoved in. And I just want all of the files. And it copies them to the mod directory. So for some reason, it's not seeing. We go to programming, vintage, Angel Belt mod. You can see these two are added. They have today's date and time, and it's not loading this for some reason. So there's something going on with the directory. It's not seeing this as a mod. It's not loading this as a mod. So that would mean this add mod path is looking, it's pointing to the wrong directory. All right. So in these instances, what I typically do is I go to the Vintage Story wiki and I look up modding efficiency. Setting up your development environment is usually the one you do. There's a lot of stuff in here that you can do to set it up, but I don't do. I don't use some of the objects in here, but there is, or should be, a manual setup here. So here is the command line arguments. Open world. Obviously we had to change this to -O instead of open world. The add mod path, right? Add origin might be the one that we need. So add origin. If you want to ship a resource mod or load mod, okay. So add mod path to your mod path. You know, you don't have to have a compile DLL for the project. If it's just a single source file, then it'll actually compile it at runtime, but it's not recommended you do that because it's just it hurts. Okay, path to your assets folder if you have any. Add origin. Add origin. So the add mod path, why it does not show like what it's actually looking for here. Path to your bin folder. That is looking for the DLL. Add origin. That is looking for the assets folder. So we have the assets folder in here. So if we set an add origin on this, right? Let's try that. Is that one dash or two? That is 2 dashes for some reason. Okay, so the origin I want to set to the same path as the mod. C programming vintage Angel Belt mod, because that's where the asset folder is. Okay, and we're trying to get this debug system to work. So if we load it again, it should immediately load the game, and this will tell me I'm not seeing the Angel Belt in here. Yep, it's not loading it. So we can also try to find. This is part of debugging. This is what goes into debugging this stuff. We want to look at logs, and we want to look at server main with maybe some Visual Studio Code. So we're kind of looking to see if it's saying, hey, nothing found in this directory. Add origin. Based on frames. Those are not associated. Remember, there it is. argc loaner assets. What is that? Origin creative. Survival. What is that? Mod origin. Okay. Obviously, that's not. I'm not trying to create origins. Mod assets. It's not seeing that mod. We'll search the following paths for mods. Mod. You know what? Let's do this. I think there's a simpler solution to this. We're going to take this add origin off completely. And we're going to take that. So it should look in the mod directory and see that there's a mod in there. So let's try that. There's a simpler solution. Flying free as a bird, right there. That is the indication. When you see the flying free as a bird, I added that as part of my mod. So this should have the Angel Belt in it. Okay. So the code here, item-angelbelt-off. So give item, I think it's give item Angel Belt off. Yes, I could look up the crafting recipe. You know, do this, and there's the crafting recipe. A gear, 32 feathers and 4 gold plates equals the Angel Belt. Okay, so character menu, Angel Belt, and we have liftoff. Bingo. And F3. Access. Flight plane access lock does not look like it's working. There's a bug. There's a bug. I wonder why that's not working. Okay. Well, that's a bug. But the mod itself, for the most part, is working just fine. Whew, that's super fast. And then let's go Alt, Home. Do it super slow. And then Home. All right. So that we got it working. How about that? So I'm gonna have to look into what's causing this bug. What you can do, and I know it just blanked the screen. We can go in here. We can get rid of this thing now. So what we need to do is add a toggle, right? We need to on fly plane lock. I think this is what we're missing. So where is? It's been a while. It's been several months since I was into this code. We have all the start stuff. I think we need, I think it's towards the bottom right here. Set key handler. Fly plane lock is angel fly plane. Angel fly plane is on fly plane lock. So if we go to on fly plane lock here, and we say we're going to set a breakpoint, toggle breakpoint. We come back here. Yeah, we come back here and we say F3. And what that does, my screen just sort of stopped because I was an idiot, and yeah, I need to fix this. Yeah, I'm playing in full screen mode, which is not what you want to do when you debug one of these things. I should have remembered that. So yeah, I'm gonna fix this, and we'll come back and try this again. So that's gonna do it for this episode. Come back next time where we actually try to fix this bug. And yeah, this is what happens when you develop mods and how much time has to go into all of these. So for that, I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.